Like and subscribe. The $1 investor. I've been saying this for decades to anyone that would listen. This country's trajectory has been heading downhill. The way these politicians are being ordered to run our country is just criminal. This man was implemented to do just one thing, to take complete credit for its demise and be okay with turning his name into the worst shit possible. This president is a puppet. He's the fall guy, the patsy, our very own Lee Harvey Oswald. He was allowed to elude prison on one condition: become president again and never question the so-called real owners of this country and their plans to destroy everything that past generations had built. Their plans to destroy everything that this country's forefathers had created and put in writing in the Constitution, and making sure it was implemented into the laws of the nation for the better of a country together as one, with inclusion and a chance for fairness and equality for every American citizen, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. This man has been allowed to elude prison multiple times for discrimination, rape, money laundering, pedophilia, fraud, and all his 34 counts of felony he was indicted for, not to mention 4 to 6 bankruptcies, all if he would become president again and smear his name for the rest of eternity, all while being held responsible for the demise of our country. All he has been given in return is to create the most corrupted administration in the history of the United States, and he's been given a pass to completely rob the system for all he can get away with pure immunity for his crimes and corruption. I've been listening to Professor Shahid Bolson for the past 5 years now. He's very articulate and very easy to understand and very informed about our way of life here in America. And why shouldn't he be? He's an American himself. He just decided to stop being bamboozled and open his eyes to the reality of the United States and how they don't want anyone that doesn't look like them, the so-called real owners of this nation, or even people that don't follow their same narrative, not to have the same prosperity as they have. I will leave you the link of his video so you can watch it for yourself and make up your own mind. I'm just the messenger, an average American working bus driver, an average American citizen who has been watching and hates what these people have turned his country into. Anyone with an average brain knows and understands that this is not what we all voted for and signed up for. We no longer recognize what our country has become. This is my summary of Dr. Shahid Bolson's video and what I understood he was trying to explain to us. I also broke down counter-arguments against his claims and narratives, just so we can see both sides of the argument and spectrum. Like and subscribe. The $1 investor. What I can tell you about the video. Based on multiple independent references and summaries from alternate web sources, the video titled "Trump Overseeing the Downfall" is commentary by Shahid Bolson, a political analyst and commentator affiliated with the Middle Nation channel. It engages strongly with themes of U.S. political and economic decline under Donald Trump's leadership. From these descriptions and community commentary, here are the central ideas that appear to be discussed in the video. 1. Framing of Donald Trump's role. The speaker positions Donald Trump not as a traditional or effective leader, but as someone overseeing structural decline in the United States, politically, economically, and culturally. 2. Narrative of American decline. The video reportedly argues that the U.S. is past its peak as the world's dominant power, and that current leadership is managing a controlled erosion rather than a renewal. 3. Economic outlook. Downfall. Commentators sharing the video frame it around themes of a looming financial crisis and collapse of the U.S. dollar's global status, painting this as a result of policy choices under Trump. 4. Messaging tone. The presentation is described as polemical, with a pessimistic tone about the future and a suggestion that ordinary Americans are not sufficiently aware of geopolitical and economic realities. 5. Audience reaction and commentary. Supplementary comments on social media and blogs suggest the video has been experienced as provocative and controversial, with viewers divided over the seriousness and accuracy of its claims. 10-minute summary. Trump, overseeing the downfall presenter/source. A political commentary attributed to Shahid Bolson on the Middle Nation channel. Core thesis. The speaker frames U.S. political and economic developments under Donald Trump not as recovery or resurgence, but as a managed decline of American global power and internal cohesion. The argument combines elements of geopolitical analysis, systemic critique, and cultural commentary. 1. Framing America's trajectory. The video opens with the claim that the United States is experiencing managed decay, not revitalization. The idea is that the narrative of making America great again conceals structural erosion of dominance both domestically and internationally. Trump's leadership is framed not as reversing decline, but packaging that decline in optimistic language. The administration's actions are described as facilitating or normalizing the lowering of U.S. global influence. The overall tone is critical and cautionary, presenting an argument that the U.S. is heading toward diminished global authority and internal fragmentation. 2. Economic and financial arguments. One of the central sections focuses on economic stability and the international role of the U.S. dollar. The video highlights statements attributed to Trump about a crashing U.S. dollar and its declining role as the world's reserve currency. There is an overarching narrative that the American economy, particularly fiscal solvency and currency strength, is under stress and being mismanaged. This economic framing is used to argue that the U.S. is losing its financial prerogatives that once undergirded its global leadership. 3. American decline as structural reality. The commentary weaves in broader trends often discussed in geopolitical analysis. Demographic shifts such as declining birth rates, aging population, and labor force issues. Shifts in global trade and investment patterns, with growth occurring increasingly outside the United States, especially in Asia and the global South. According to the described narrative, these trends reflect structural decline rather than temporary setbacks. 4. Geopolitical realignment. The video also discusses changes in international power dynamics. Expansion of economic and political influence by non-Western powers, e.g., BRICS nations, China, India. Reduced reliance on U.S.-led institutions and financial systems, encouraging multipolarity. This part of the analysis suggests that the global system is moving away from U.S.-centric structures toward a more distributed geopolitical order. 5. Cultural and social critique. Beyond economics and geopolitics, the video includes a cultural critique. It highlights polarization, fragmentation, and what the speaker views as declining social cohesion within the United States. There is an argument that Americans have internalized narratives of exceptionalism even as foundational institutions and social bonds weaken. This section is presented as amplifying the effects of political and economic decline, making effective responses more difficult. 6. The managed decline. Argument. A central rhetorical device in the video is the notion that decline is intentional, or at least structurally unavoidable, not simply accidental. Elite interests and think tanks are described as directing policy outcomes that favor global capital flows and institutional stability over national prosperity. The narrative suggests that elites have transitioned the focus of growth and investment out of the U.S. toward markets with younger populations and higher growth potential. This positioning frames political leadership as participating in, rather than resisting, broader systemic forces. 7. Warnings and implications. The closing sections of the video reportedly sound a strong warning. Viewers are cautioned that without awareness and structural change, the trends discussed will continue. The speaker urges reflection on cultural and institutional weaknesses that may have contributed to decline. The call to action, if present, centers on re-evaluating assumptions about national direction and the distribution of power. Key themes highlighted. Theme summary: U.S. decline. The U.S. is portrayed as diminishing in global influence and economic strength. Trump's role. Trump is depicted not as reversing decline, but as overseeing or symbolizing it. Global power shifts, power and investment are shifting toward the global south and non-Western systems. Currency and economy concerns about the dollar's dominance and U.S. fiscal direction are central. Cultural critique. Internal polarization and loss of unity compound structural challenges. Assessment and context. This video's perspective aligns with a broader genre of political commentary that frames the current era as part of American decline discourse, an idea debated by scholars, commentators, and policymakers. The debate over whether the U.S. is actually in structural decline or experiencing relative transitions is significant but highly contested. While the video's framing emphasizes decline and managerial erosion, mainstream academic and policy analysis varies on the degree, causes, and future trajectory of U.S. influence. Like and subscribe. The $1 Investor. Mainstream assessment. Is the United States in structural decline? There is no single authoritative consensus on whether the United States is in irreversible decline. Rather, experts identify debate and nuance across economic, geopolitical, and social dimensions. 1. Economic strength versus structural challenges. Arguments that the U.S. remains strong economically. The U.S. remains the world's largest economy with high levels of innovation, particularly in technology and research. It leads in sectors like artificial intelligence, finance, and advanced sciences. Its currency, the U.S. dollar, still dominates global reserves and transaction systems, giving Washington unique leverage in global finance and sanctions. According to recent analyses, U.S. economic growth has outperformed many other advanced economies over the past 2 decades. Economic issues that raise concerns. Persistent and increasing national debt, surpassing historic highs, poses risks to fiscal flexibility and long-term budgeting. Some indicators like manufacturing share, inequality, and infrastructure condition reflect internal weaknesses. Structural weaknesses in income distribution and workforce dynamics, for example, stagnating wages for some workers, are also cited as long-term challenges. Summary: economic. The U.S. economy shows both resilience and ongoing structural challenges. Experts disagree on whether current issues amount to terminal decline or manageable adjustment. 2. Global power and geopolitics. U.S. still retains significant global influence. Even amid competition, the United States maintains the most powerful and technologically advanced military with extensive alliances, NATO, bilateral defense agreements. It has major diplomatic and cultural soft power, and its technological and research institutions remain global leaders. Challenges to unipolar dominance. Other nations, especially China and India, have increased their economic and geopolitical roles, contributing to a more multipolar global order. Shifts in trade, geopolitical alliances, and regional blocs, for example, expanding BRICS membership, have challenged U.S. supremacy in some arenas. Summary: geopolitics. While the U.S. is no longer the sole global hegemon it once was after the Cold War, it remains a central power among several major actors. 3. Social and political indicators. Internal stresses cited in decline narratives. Polarization and institutional trust have declined, with surveys showing lower confidence in government and core institutions. Long-term demographic challenges, like falling fertility rates and aging cohorts, raise questions about future labor market dynamics and social safety net sustainability. Political dysfunction and gridlock are frequently cited as risks to effective governance and long-term planning. Opposing perspectives. Some analysts argue that the U.S. political system is resilient, with mechanisms that have historically adapted to profound stress and change. Strong civic institutions, a tradition of rule of law, and the capacity for innovation are cited as stabilizing forces that help absorb political conflict. Summary: social/political. There are real signs of internal strain, but whether these constitute decline or reflect adaptive stress responses varies by interpretation. 4. Historical context and long-term trends. Declinism as a recurrent theme. Scholarly and historical perspectives show that fears of national decline are common across eras, including during past transitions of global power, for example, the shift from Britain to the US in the early 20th century. Some historical analyses argue that perceived decline often accompanies periods of transformation rather than outright collapse. Comparative power dynamics. Historians and political economists note that past great powers have experienced long cycles of rise, adaptation, and transformation, not always terminal fall, as global conditions evolve. Balanced conclusion. No definitive evidence shows that the United States is in irreversible decline. However, indicators of relative shifts include slow relative growth compared to some emerging markets, domestic challenges, debt, polarization, infrastructure, more complex and competitive global politics. Indicators of ongoing strength include technological leadership and innovation capacity, military and diplomatic influence, currency dominance, and continuing economic resilience. Thus, many experts characterize the United States as confronting structural pressures that require serious policy responses, not as a nation already in terminal decline. The future trajectory depends on how these economic, political, and global challenges are addressed through governance, innovation, and institutional adaptation. Like and subscribe. The $1 Investor.